Welcome everybody to Spitballin Cards. We have the whole crew. My name is Scott. We also have Chris, baseball card addict. We have Phil, Filmington. We have Ty, better known as Teapot, and we have Jeff, who is my favorite cardboard. Thank you for joining this week. We are excited to bring a couple different topics and to discuss some hobby news. So the first thing I want to raise to you all is Bowman Chrome. Recently, Bowman Chrome has come out, and we've seen on social media, you see the one post where a superfractor of one player was pulled twice by two different people. So obviously there's two superfractors, which are each labeled one of one. That happens from time to time because Topps does make extra superfractor sheets just in case there is like a replacement that needs to be fulfilled, like if it's damaged, anything along those lines. But it's not very often in a product like Bowman Chrome, we see superfractors have these issues. So what Topps has actually done is they have decided to put a bounty out because 95 players actually had duplicate superfractors in Bowman Chrome, which is a huge deal because these are like the top prospects. We really want their cards. They're not the autograph versions. They are the base Bowman Chrome versions. And so Topps has put a bounty out for each of these cards, some of which, like Ethan Salas, is a $75,000 bounty. So I want to hear all of your thoughts. If you think this is a problem, if you think it's a good thing for Topps to have done, or do you think it might cause issues? Chris, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it is definitely going to cause issues. Like we've already seen this. There's a very popular Facebook post of a gentleman who purchased a superfractor for $2,000. It was shipped to him from eBay, and then the seller is intercepting the package and pulling it back because the bounty was set post-sale, but before delivery. So now the question is like, when does ownership change? And I can see people are just blasting the seller, but I'll be straight up with you guys. If I sold that card for $2K and that Topps is offering me $20K for it, I don't know what I would do. I cannot say that seller is wrong. I don't know. I think this whole thing creates a lot of issues, and I'm sure we're just seeing the very beginning of them. But if I pulled one of these, I would be selling it back to Topps. Lickety split.
So that one's $20K.
Yes.
Do you know, I don't know if anybody can answer this question. What is the price of like the not great players? Like Ethan Saul is a $75K. This guy's $20K. What's the base cost? Do we know?
I think most of them are at least $3K.
$3K. So do you think, is there a world where this was intentional by Topps? Because they want to have more bounties, because now there's 95 bounties, which is going to sell product? Or do you think that it was just a pure mistake and out of the goodness of their hearts, they're trying to make it right? What's your thoughts, Phil?
I don't think it was intentional, because you look at the product selling prices now. Now you're looking at HTA, which is it lower than regular Bowman yet? You know, pre-release price, it was around, I think, 330, 350. And now it's closed, like the gap's closed completely. It's selling for like 250 to 275 now. So you've got roughly half the products that just don't have the demand because they don't have the non-autograph cards. So on top of that, you know, you could argue that there might be some legal aspect of this where they could be open to maybe a class action lawsuit. I don't know the details there. I think what it comes down to is Fanatics has deep pockets to be able to make up for these mistakes and compensate in a big way, in a way that's commensurate to the crime or more so. You look at, what is it, roughly $750,000 total across 90 or so players. That's what, like $9,000 mean? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't have a set of multipliers for non-autographed supers, and they tend not to follow a general rule. It's sort of just like whatever people are willing to pay because they don't come up at all or often. But generally, these things sell for 40 times ish a blue non-auto, which for some of these players that aren't very good, maybe they do okay on release week, release month, but months later, not so much. So it's interesting, man. And these are the types of bounties that I like, the ones that don't have an expiration date, right?
They do.
It does.
They do.
Well, that's unfortunate.
It's 5 months.
So what happens if two of them get pulled 5 months from now? Just sorry, there's two of them on the market?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's the key for them. You know, they're looking to offload as much product as possible.
Exactly.
And the fact that Bowman Chrome is, even the regular hobby box, it hasn't like increased since release date
That's
prices.
what I was going to ask you, Phil. You have more of a pulse on the hobby box price. I was wondering how much it was affected.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think it'd be up more. Chalk it up to the market, chalk it up to them maybe opening the floodgates a little more with regards to where last few months they've had like kind of a slow release strategy where they're like being very controlled with how much they sell and allocate within the first week, the second week, the third week. And I think that's keeping prices artificially higher because they're controlling that supply. Doesn't seem like that's the case with Bowman Chrome. So maybe they open it up a little bit and they realize that, oh, prices are going to tank, guys. We've got to, do this aggressive bounty thing, which, I mean, if it's 5 months, somebody like me who sits on wax, like this is completely against what I want, right? Because as soon as that bounty's over, same thing with the Topps Chrome buybacks, like prices are coming down, then they're coming down hard in a lot of cases, like Topps Chrome buyback. I know we're not talking about that, but that's a big deal. This isn't just like a card that nobody's going to hit that's in the product. This is like, between a half to like one per box of these players, these MVP players, like it's giving automatic value in its material. Yeah, I mean, good on them. It's a smart business strategy. At the end of the day, what do they care if the price of their product crashes a year from now, as long as they can sell it, right? They don't care about the second or third person and all the other transactions down the line.
So I do feel like, we have to say, I always hate praising Topps when they make a mistake and they try to fix it. It's like they made the mistake. We've seen this last year with 2022 Topps Chrome. They literally didn't include the cards they hyped up, and then everybody bought the product. They all got kind of screwed. We had the silver pack, whatever thing, buyback. It was a mess. And we did it again a year later. We had two of the biggest packing errors we've ever seen within a year of each other. So I don't want to say great job Topps for doing this bounty program, but at the same time, at least they're doing something. So when they get this card back, it sounds like they're just going to destroy the card, the new card, right? There's going to be 2 Superfractors. Whoever turns the card in first, it just gets destroyed. But that does mean if for the Ethan Salas Bowman Chrome Superfractor, whoever gets the second one, no world will they be able to sell that card for $75,000. So it does provide a very interesting thing of Topps labeling it that way. Ty, I haven't heard anything from you yet. What are your thoughts on the whole situation?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think it's a mistake that makes you scratch your head and just say, like, this, of all things, how is this possible? Like, really, this one's worse than last year's with not inserting the short prints. And, I think this is just like, this can't happen. I would love to personally have more insight and understanding into how Topps, inserts cards. How do they randomize them? How do they make sure that pack odds are accurate? We've seen other issues with pack odds just clearly not being what they are, where cards that should only have a print run of 5 or 10, like the Uranus from the Cosmic set this year, has like 19 or 75 copies or something on. Everybody's grinning because we still have juvenile high school humor.
I wasn't going to say it.
I've heard some people saying it Uranus, just trying to not go there, even though that's definitely not how it's pronounced. So that's my first thing is I was just like, okay, how does this mistake happen? Well, because we don't have any visibility into what their process is in general, it's really hard. I try to give the benefit of the doubt to people, to companies. It's a little bit more difficult to do. It's like we pay for this product, we pay good money. This is, really a really important release. We have high expectations and you should absolutely be able to deliver. So to me, if they would come out and say, hey, not only this, but we're going to give you some insight into what our process is. We need to restore the trust of the hobby community of baseball card collectors to say, you can believe that there are some problems. We've taken over. We're going to fix them. Here's how we're even just some insight into how they're approaching it, because Michael Rubin did come out and say, this absolutely will not happen again. We've identified how it happened and it's not going to happen anymore. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing? What's your change? What's your modification? As far as, whether or not I would put a stop on a delivery to a customer, boy, it's really hard. Like Jeff said, Chris said, there's a temptation there. If I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate, like my gut says that's just completely trashy. Like send the card and say, I made the sale, whatever. You're not going to like chase somebody down if they just bought that card from you at a card show and go like beat them up and take it back. At least I hope not. But then at the same time, if you mail something to somebody as part of an eBay transaction and that card goes lost in the mail, you're on the hook for it, not them. So it's not like if you're using like strictly like where does the point of ownership change hands, it really doesn't change hands technically, apparently, until the card gets to the final end point. So
that's a good way to think about that. That's
you can play a little bit of devil's advocate on, on both sides with that and just say, it's my card. Plus the person could get it and say, oh, it's not what I thought it was, or it has a speck in the corner that you didn't tell me about, so you have to refund me, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's kind of maybe an important thing to think about in that regard. And then the last thing I'll say is like, I don't think this was intentional at all. I think that would be really foolish marketing. I mean, I can understand speculating as to whether or not it would be, but I don't think it makes them look good at all as a company. And the interesting thing about bounties in general so far is that I'll take another product, which is 2022-23 Bowman Chrome University basketball, which came out. Topps is trying to push other sports out, football and basketball now with the NIL stuff and college athletes. And that product released, and then they announced maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks even after that product came out, they announced that the Victor Wembanyama autos to 99, which were redemptions, were going to be part of this special event. Might have even been longer after that, where you fly down and down to Texas, some secret location with him on site, and get these cards. And one of them got like a custom inscribed "My First Auto Ever" card. Cool idea. I love the marketing and the thought behind that. But I can tell you, it did not move the needle on those wax prices whatsoever. That product actually came down like $60 from release day, just more and more and more and more. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Wembanyama didn't play well and played very limited in the summer league that they had. But I don't know. I think I'm encouraged personally by some of the attempts at things. I know other people think it's kind of shameless or stupid. They haven't all been hitting home runs, but at least they're doing something different. And the other bounties in general, just, I don't know, they don't really bother me. They don't make me want to go out and buy the product. They also don't bother me or seem like scummy like some people think they are.
When Fanatics said they were gonna, 5 times the hobby, I don't think they meant 10x the hobby.
Times.
I don't think they meant to include 10 superfractors.
10x the superfractors.
Yeah, that's all we've really seen so far. So it does bring up a question. I want to hear each of your thoughts. Moral dilemma. Would you, A, if you were the seller of the card, cancel it mid, post office run to the buyer and get it back? Would you, B, let it go and just say, I was cool with $2,000. It is what it is. That's the way it shakes out. Or would you, C, try to reach out to the buyer and split it all? What are your thoughts? Chris, you already said yours, so you got to live with it. You would take the card.
I'm not changing my mind, but I do have a quick question before we get to those answers. So, Phil, as an unopened wax, a sealed wax collector, I believe you said before you bought a case of Bowman Chrome. Are you considering selling it right now and then maybe buying another case a few months down the road after the bounty is done? Are you cashing out right now? What's your thoughts here?
Oh, well, that one I've already used up. So it's sort of a non-factor for me, meaning that I've effectively sold the packs in my RCEB already. So no. I don't have that dilemma to deal with. But no. I think the market's going to adjust based on the post bounty prices. So sure, I could get a lower price, but I'm getting lower valued product with lower demand. So for me, it's, the market's going to adjust, I think, for that quite quickly, in my opinion.
Okay. I was just curious. I think the only person here that would have a bunch of unopened Bowman Chrome they're sitting on. So I was curious what your POV would be.
Have you stolen back any of those boxes that you sent out to get the supers out of them?
Yeah. To bring us back on track, I think it kind of depends on how much you value your public reputation. And also, if you do the wrong thing and you do get slandered through social media, which you will if you're any one of us here, at the end of the day, I was thinking about this. What are the chances that Fanatics does not give it to the seller that gets the card back? Like, they don't pay that person off, and instead they decide to split it evenly. So you got slandered and you got the same result that the buyer wanted, right? The buyer was offering to split it, I think. 50-50.
Or they just reach out to the buyer and give him everything.
But I think this is complicated because I think there's actually 3 owners of that card. there was an original seller before it went to the second seller.
Wow. Ooh.
I think I heard that. So then what do you do? So yeah, this is a cluster F. I personally don't have too much of an issue with the bounty other than if I was in the situation of being one of the people that got screwed, which I'm not. So I don't know.
I don't know if you do get screwed though. If you end up with one of the supers after the other one's been cashed in, you didn't get screwed. You just got the super, right? Like that's the expectation from the beginning with the product.
You're right. That's a good
point.
point.
The Superfractor. The other person just got lucky, like really lucky.
I did see someone who bought a Superfractor. It was in transit to them, and the other Superfractor was just listed on eBay. So he was like, I have $20,000 coming into the mail to me right now, but will I get it in time for the other guy submits it back to Topps? That's where it can suck. Yeah. But it's funny, all these random situations that we're talking about that shouldn't happen actually did happen. So it's just funny to see how many issues it causes. But to answer my own question, you all know I have a very strong moral compass, and I'm kind of annoying about it probably in conversation. So I probably would just wash my hands of it and just be sad about it the rest of my life. But you never know until it's actually happening how you would react. But it's definitely a thought-provoking question about the hobby. So
it's tough economic times, right? We're not talking like 8,000. We're talking 18,000. Sure, that gets taxed if you do the right thing there, which is another moral dilemma. But yeah, man, I mean, that's hard. I wouldn't judge people really if they'd go either way with that amount of money. You know, that could go towards your family. You just have to kind of leave the hobby, leave blowout, leave social media for a while. I don't know. That's going to be tough.
Jeff, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of I agree with what everyone has said so far, that it's a tough spot that you had put in. I feel like the guy could have handled it better. I heard Phil mention that the buyer had even offered to split it, the buyer of the card. And if that's the case,
would have afterwards, but who knows if he would.
Yeah, maybe after he's been ignored, like, hey, split it with me.
Yeah, like
after he's already taken away. Yeah, well, I was going to say that I looked at the numbers today because Topps has all of these on the website. And out of the 95 cards, as of this afternoon, 43 were listed as pending, which means the owners have reached out to Topps. Topps has agreed to buy it back. It's just going through that process. 4 were listed as purchased. So four of the cards have actually been purchased by Topps, so that's done. But all those other ones are pending. So it's right at about 50% of the entire product already are either pending or purchased. So it seems like a lot of the products being opened.
I'm telling you, man, all the big cards surface right away. It always seems like so much of the product gets open. By the way, I'd like to bring up one thing. This is not quite the same moral conundrum as pulling a gold Trevor Lawrence Kaboom and then not giving it to your customer. This is different. There's a little bit more gray area here. Do you guys agree with that? Because there's no way that I would hold a card like that if it was $20,000 from my customers.
Yeah.
No, completely not.
Yeah, everybody buys Rookie Explosion box. He's a good guy, obviously. Right, Phil?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. No, Rookie Explosion box actually is awesome. But
quick question, though. Quick question. When we're talking about bounties, now this and with the MVP buyback, that seems like the first foray for Topps and Fanatics in, but we're also seeing these external bounties, like the David Adams bounties. I think the latest one was on the Babe Ruth in Bowman Chrome for a large amount. What was the prior one? The Drew Jones? I think it was Drew Jones.
Yep. Drew Jones for $250 or something.
Yeah, something extraordinary. And so you wonder, I don't know, maybe if they're getting funding from somewhere like Fanatics or Topps under the table.
Insurance company.
Right. Yeah. So what do you guys think about the aftermarket bounties, those kind of things?
So we saw Magic the Gathering, the One Ring, right? I think I had like a $3 million bounty, like just crazy. It was the first serialized Magic the Gathering card. It was crazy. I do think that Topps and other companies and breakers are going to have their own individualized bounties if it helps move products at this point. I don't like it myself, just because it seems so unnecessary for sports cards with how much is already moving. It just makes people gamble more. It's more like a lottery ticket, even more than it was before, because you're hoping to get the jackpot, which not just is the card, but you get $100,000 as well, when the Babe Ruth Superfractor is not worth $200,000. It's not worth. I wouldn't pay $1,000 for that card myself. I don't think it's cool at all. Like, no part of that interests me. Good for fanatics trying something unique, but it doesn't interest me. And so I'm not a big fan of it myself, but maybe everybody else has a different opinion. But that's my thoughts.
That might be one that they got wrong. Who knows? Out of all bounties, 5 years from now, that's the one I could see where it's like, oh, shouldn't have sold that to DA Card World. Whoops. I don't know. Like
Babe Ruth?
Yeah.
Really?
So half the people are bashing it. Half the people kind of like it. Even some vintage folks, like they kind of like the idea of it.
Okay.
If it
So
catches
I think
on,
for any Topps innovation, if only half the people are bashing it, that means it's a success. Like the taco fractors, even, are people really bashing them now? Like, okay, that was pretty bad, but there's been worse ones. There's been worse ones, like the what is it? The negative refractors, frozen
fractors.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, like, there's stuff that Fanatics is doing with these innovations. This is what I like to see, like permanent value added to a set, to a release, which you're seeing with taco fractors. They're selling for big money, even though people think they're stupid. Like Braden Shoemake, somebody pulled that from one of my products. It's like a $250 card, I think. Ridiculous, right? And we still don't know what the benefit is. So there's certain cards, certain innovations that they're doing that I like as a wax holder, because it's sort of like a bounty without an expiration, right? It adds value to the entire release. Another reason why the Bowman Chrome is almost outselling HTA, which is all autographs versus the possibility of pulling some non-autograph numbered stuff. So what they did there, the fact that it was only 3 players to start, it's not like they gave us 50 different vintage players all at once. It's just a few, and these are all numbered, right? And there's only a few different variants, and they're not going to reprint Babe Ruth anymore, they said, which they have very little, right? There's not really much upside in them lying about that. Oh, Red Sox uniform now.
Not with the first logo is the
right. Oh, yeah. So you're saying that they could come out with second-year prospect Babe Ruth
cards, just not with the first logo.
We've got a lot of legends to get through before they do that.
Tom Brady, etc. So that part is cool. So I'd give them some credit there. Yeah. And as a wax opener, I like some of these other it's not a bounty, but the Topps Chrome MVP buyback. I kind of like that if I'm opening wax. It's kind of cool.
The bounty is fun if you open wax. I don't open wax, and I think that's pretty apparent if you watch my other content. I'm more of a singles guy. I feel I get really disappointed if I get beat, and then I can compare that to how much I could have spent on a single. Do you all know Tap Sports Baseball, the mobile gaming app? You might not. My dad and I have played this video game called Tap Sports Baseball, and what it is, this has points, I promise. But what this is every week they release a legend player. And every week you're trying to spend the gold you get in game to get this legend player. And it's so almost impossible, but that's everybody's goal in this game. I think we're going to see Topps just releasing these legends for who knows how long. Every year there's going to be 3 in Bowman Chrome. And I just think it's so gimmicky. I don't know. It just seems so unnecessary, and it's fun. And who am I to say what other people want to collect? But it's just, I can imagine we're going to have legends that aren't legends at some point. That's what happens in this game. I don't know. I just think it is gimmicky, but like you said, Phil, for some people, it adds a level of excitement, and that's what's important when opening cards nowadays.
Yeah, I can't see these legend Bowman firsts holding the value that Ruth and Bench and Clemente have right now. I just can't see that value holding for the next 2 or 3 years. When next year's Bowman Chrome comes out and they have 3 other legends,
Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays.
Yeah, Jackie Robinson, Hank Aaron. We won't hear about these 3 again.
Well, there's so few of them. So if they catch on and are collected, there's less than 100 of each player.
That's true.
But are they going to do Bowman first if every person doesn't have a Bowman's first? Because then we can do John Smoltz. Ty likes John Smoltz. There's a Bowman first John Smoltz. Does that interest you, Ty?
Hard for me to say it really does. Probably not for whatever the price might end up being. No, there's going to be plenty of other cards that I would go after. I don't. It's just one of those things where I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah,
I think it's okay to say this doesn't move the needle for me. It doesn't do anything for me without feeling like you have to you have to rip it.
Exactly.
Not open it, but just crap all over it because you don't like it or something. And that's where my mind goes with a lot of this stuff. Like I said, the big bounties on like the one big hit card, it doesn't entice me to go buy the product and open it. It is a bit like, you know, the golden ticket type of thing. It definitely doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt, you know, and I think maybe there's some cool stories that come out of it for people that, you know, you have some kid or some person who's down on their luck or whatever. If they do happen to hit that card, it's like,
yeah,
wow, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. You didn't have to fight through some, you know, picking an auction house and having Ken Golden fly to your house to like tell you to sell it on his platform and then not get what you thought you were going to get for it or whatever. Like, it's guaranteed money. Fine. It's an interesting way to spend your marketing budget and to try to generate hype around stuff. I'm not sure that it generates the type of allure for the products that they might think it does, but I definitely don't. I don't have a problem with it.
So one correction that we said, they do have base cards for these legends. So Babe Ruth does have a base card, just to know.
He does.
Got it.
Yeah. And they go for about $300 to $400 still. So like that's
Oh,
that
okay.
you can say like I'm saying, you know, I don't think it's that cool, and I don't. Like, it's not what I want to collect. Would I be excited if I pulled one? Yeah, because my box is paid off.
Well, they have to be short printed, aren't they?
Yes, very much so. Like SSP status, according to everyone's listing, at least. So yeah, the bounties, I think it's an interesting thing. It will definitely get wax opened quicker, which may benefit people like Phil who hold wax because everyone wants to pull certain things. But it's interesting. Phil, you're thinking when I said that. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, like the first effect I see is like people that are already irrationally kind of addicted to wax.
That's my
the scratch ticket mentality. Fanatics is tapping into breakers set prices for everybody else in the market because of how much product they open. So you're getting their irrational community to set prices for wax because if they pay Y, then Y minus X is what the breaker pays, which is higher than anybody else on the market for that product. And then again, this is based on the theory that breakers set prices, and then you've got everybody else, shops, others kind of falling in line with the breaker pricing. So I see it as kind of dangerous.
That's
from my standpoint, like short-term, long-term holding.
Phil, you said that so perfectly, man. That was exactly how I feel. It is going to the addiction side. And remember back in the day, even in 2018 Topps Update, the set with Acuna, Soto, Shohei, a bunch of other great players, that product was like $50 a box at the National or the next year. Like within a year, it was cheap. And that's a fantastic product. Now it's worth like $1,000 a hobby box. That will not happen again with this mentality either. So those that want to open wax, you know, for a lower price point, this might restrict that from happening, which is unfortunate. All right, the next question I want to pose to all of you. I want to hear, who is your buy from what you've seen this year? What I mean by that, what player either impressed you or proved themselves to you or shows that they actually deserve a spot as like someone you might quote unquote invest in, kind of like who is that player? Why is it that player, and so forth? Phil, who is the person that you can think of that is your buy from what they did this season now that the season's wrapped up?
Well, if this was an 18-month hold, I might answer differently. But if we're talking like a 9-month hold, I'm going to go with Jose Altuve and Aaron Judge. Bounce back players. I think they're primed to have good seasons. I think people forget that Aaron Judge is a year removed from 11.6 Fangraphs WAR. The body's got to hold up. He's overrated and he's overvalued because he's on the Yankees, right? But he's going to be on the Yankees again next year. So with Jose Altuve, he would have been a pick this year, but he injured his, thumb? So I like where he's at from a career WAR standpoint. And yes, the Astros, the stigma, people are more likely to forget about that a little bit than they are to forget about a guy like Wander Franco, Fernando Tatis. Jose Altuve it is.
Great. All right, Chris, let me hear your thoughts.
Okay, I feel like I'm not going to say, I feel like the obvious answer is Soto, so I'm not going to say Soto, but I am going to say his teammate. I think Manny Machado is still spectacular. He was a buy going into like the end of last year when he had like arguably one of the best years of his career. He flamed out this year. He did not have a good year, but clearly something's wrong with his elbow. He's having surgery like the very second the season was over. He was scheduled for elbow surgery. They were kind of vague about what it was, but he was DHing a lot. And you got to assume if Machado is DHing, something is seriously wrong with his throwing elbow because so much of his value is on defense. The dude is phenomenal. I was just trying to pull up his his page real quick. I mean, he's got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. He's got 5 top 10 MVP finishes. 4 of those are in the top 5. He is only 30 years old. And I think the way that this season ended for both him and the Padres, a lot of people are just kind of washing their hands of him, especially when that story came out about part of the dysfunction in the clubhouse. And the writer didn't really want to blame Machado, but certainly said Machado is sort of in charge of the clubhouse and there were all these issues. Didn't really want to point at him. But I think that team is in desperate need of a new manager. But I would say Machado is on my list for a huge bounce back 2024. And if I can find a nice Bowman Chrome auto of his that someone is just sort of punting on in the offseason, I will definitely pounce all over that thing. Because his whole career will not be defined by this. By the way, he still hit 30 home runs in what will be his worst season of the last decade.
Definitely. Awesome. Thanks, Rick. Good choice. Jeff, who's your pick?
All right. I agree with Chris's first point about Soto. I just have to mention him quickly because even in a down year, he had a phenomenal statistical year. And the last 2 months show that he is still one of the best hitters in the game. He's only 24. So I think there's a lot of buying opportunities for him this offseason, especially with the way the Padres flamed out. Selfishly, though, I'm going to be looking for some good Yelich cards. I'd love to see him bounce back this year. He's kind of reinvented himself as a leadoff hitter, more of a contact hitter. He's still not back to where he was in his MVP year, but he looked really good, and he's the glue that held the Brewers together this year. So his cards have gotten so low that I feel like maybe I can find 1 or 2 of his very best cards to pick up this offseason. So that's what I'm going to be looking for.
Awesome. Teapot?
I've got a couple guys, and this is sort of atypical for me, the guys I'm going to say, but the first one is Jordan Walker. His cards have come down a ton, 60%. There was a lot of hype around him to start. Obviously, his rookie cards came out. It's not surprising to see those come down, but I'm interested to see what he can do in a full season. Hopefully, health and can play. He's obviously big, first round draft pick. He played well in the minors, and his cards have just come down a ton. So I think there could be some hype and speculation around him. And then the other guy, speaking of hype, is somebody I think I'm just really excited to see how he works out in the majors is Jackson Holiday. And his Sapphire, PSA 9s, those were doing 150 to 170-ish just a few months ago, back in early August. And they've come all the way back down. The most recent sale on that card was $70. So he's somebody I'm looking at. I'm going to wait a few more months until people aren't thinking about baseball and are on to other things. And I'll probably be looking to pick up some of his cards.
You didn't take none of you took the players I was thinking of, which is great. I have 4. But I'm going to stick to 1 as my real answer because I want to be truthful to how this game works.
Mookie Betts.
I actually was thinking, I kind of wish in some ways he had a down year so I could get some cards for a decent price for once. But
how did he not hit 1 home run in September? He needed 1 home run.
Dude, I have a Mookie Betts chat, and we were all just every day just beside ourselves. But the season he had was amazing, so I can't complain. And for those keeping track of the Mookie counter, I did not bring him up. Jeff did, so that's not my fault. But the player I would pick is Fernando Tatis Jr. He has such a high ceiling, and he's so cheap. And right now, I would not buy him for the long term because I do think the steroids part will impact his legacy. But he still is 24 years old. He had 5.5 WAR. He was the best defensive player in baseball. And he's coming back from an injury-ridden, a little bit with his shoulder and his wrist. And on top of that, all the pressure of the steroids thing, that will die down next year. And if he can have a decent offensive year, he had a 113 OPS plus this year and 5.5 WAR. That's because he had 2.3 defensive WAR, which is one of the best in baseball. I do think that he could be an MVP candidate easily, very easily, because his career OPS plus is 143. OPS plus, by the way, it looks at OPS, which is on base plus slugging, and then it compares you to league average. So 100 is league average. He was 113, meaning he was 13% better than league average. Anything above a 120 is pretty dang good. Anything above a 140 is really good. Anything above a 160 is MVP. So he has that ceiling offensively, and his biggest holdback for me was his defense. And now he's the best defensive outfielder in baseball. So I just think there is opportunity there because his cards are so cheap, and he proved it on defense. The other players I thought of: Garrett Cole, Bobby Witt Jr., Francisco Lindor. Garrett Cole will win Cy Young this year as a Yankee. He has a fantastic chance of 3,000 strikeouts. I think he'll get there. And on top of that, Bobby Witt Jr. went from the worst defensive player in baseball to one of the very best. Plus, he had a 30-30 season. I like that. And Francisco Lindor is basically at 48 Fangraphs WAR, which is crazy. He might be a player who doesn't have a lot of value in the moment now, but I think he could as he retires a Met. But overall, that is it for our crew. Anything anyone wants to add before we let everybody go?
Yeah, I just want to add one quick thing on Tatis. He was still insanely popular around Major League Baseball. His jersey, MLB released a list of like the top 10 selling jerseys to fans. His was either 5th or 6th off the top of my head. So I don't think the average fan cares that he was suspended.
Especially the young fan, right?
Yeah, the young fan.
I've been saying that all along. I don't know. I'm skeptical that it's going to impact his legacy. It happened so early in his career. We'll see.
You can get, I saw someone selling a purple Bowman Chrome autograph on Instagram for $800. BGS 9.
Jeff and I had a little commiseration session the other night. We have some Stadium Club rookies of his, a couple gold minteds, an orange refractor, a chrome refractor. We love those cards, and we were just looking at sales prices and sort of sobbing quietly into a glass of whiskey.
Exactly. And the thing is, I think there's upside for those cards because, like you mentioned, he's still popular, and the Padres are one big postseason run away from Padres fans falling back in love with him as he hits 40 home runs next year, which is a possibility. And like having Gold Glove defense, he will win a Gold Glove this year. Like all of that makes me interested in his cards for the first
He
time.
just has to remember how to hit.
Which he will. I think he will.
I think Vegas will have him number 2 for their like NL MVP. I think he'll come in ahead of Mookie and Soto for like better odds.
Older. He's older. He's
Yeah.
going to age. He'll be harder moving forward. Soto had a bad season, which actually was really good, but I agree with you, Phil. There's a good chance of that.
He's just more of a lock to have a 9 WAR season in Soto at this point. And I love Soto. 18-month buy.
Absolutely.
And
All right, guys.
And your buy.
Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys later. Make sure you subscribe and like the video, and we'll talk to you soon.